Hi, welcome to the MacIver Report. I'm Bill Osmolsky, the contents for the MacIver Institute. This is our staff podcast, so we get to talk about things in a more informal format than we might ordinarily get to on the website, MacIverInstitute.com. Today, it's all about Act 10. You know, this is the law that the left hates more than any other law that Republicans have ever passed. It's a law that reformed collective bargaining in Wisconsin and essentially eliminated public sector unions, saved the state billions of dollars. The union bosses are no longer running the show at the state or local level. The left has never forgiven conservatives for this law. They continue to fight it. It was passed 13 years ago. They're still fighting it. Back in Dane County Court, Dane County judge recently threw it out, and supposedly it's no longer in effect. The unions are scrambling, trying to reestablish their dominance, while Republicans saying they're going to appeal it. And, well, they're going to appeal it, and of course, you know, that road leads to the Wisconsin Supreme Court, which is led by liberals. So, a lot to talk about here, but we're going to take a trip down memory lane with two of our staff members who were a little bit young to fully appreciate Act 10 when it went into effect. But why don't you two introduce yourselves?
Yeah, Michael Lucas, policy analyst. I know almost nothing about Act 10. I'm not even from this state. So.
And Rebecca Drager, intern here.
All right, so if we leave here with you two understanding Act 10, there's a good chance that our viewers will understand it too. You know, the thing with Act 10 was, I mean, it was passed in 2011. That was a generation ago. And so there's been immense benefits from this law. It took the unions used to drive policy in the state. They used to drive all the rules. They had all that political power, all that legal power, all that financial power. So we talk a lot about what the public sector unions were able to do at the state level and drive costs. But at the local level, I mean, local governments had no ability to push back against the unions. So, I mean, this also drove up costs at the local level, too. Act 10 just took all that power away from the unions. And so, at the MacIver Institute, we try to calculate every year how much did Act 10 save us, or has saved Wisconsin taxpayers overall. It's not an easy calculation to do. The two most direct impacts of Act 10 as far as public workers are concerned is they had to start paying for half of their pension contributions, and that's really easy to calculate. It's all, it's just raw numbers. You just plug them into a spreadsheet and you've got that. But it also made them pay 12.5% towards their health insurance. But not only that, but it also freed local governments in the state to pick healthcare plans, cheaper healthcare plans. Before, the unions used to run their own health insurance companies, and that's part of the contracts was you had to use the union's health insurance. So you've got, it gets a little complicated there, and there's not like a standardized reporting system. So we've got a lot of different sources that we collect, and for years our methodology on calculating that savings was, okay, this is what health insurance costs were for all these different units of government in 2011, and this is what they are now.
Right.
Well, and using that approach, we over the years, it's added up to $16 billion between the pension and that. That approach is fundamentally flawed. And the reason is because you're kind of locking in costs from 2011 as the gold standard. Like whatever health insurance costs in 2011 is what should cost forever. Or that's just, your reference point. And it just, everything's gone up in costs since 2011.
Yeah.
It just through inflation, if nothing else. So if we had continued that methodology, which I admit it was flawed because of that, eventually things would start to curve back down. So 100 years from now, if you were still using that same methodology and 2111, that's health insurance should cost what they were in 2011, it's going to start to show, well, at the time cost us a fortune.
All right. Yeah.
So we adopted what the city of Milwaukee's been doing, and the city of Milwaukee, controlled by liberals, but very appreciative of the flexibility Act 10 gave them. Every year they took their trajectory of where healthcare costs were going before Act 10, and they've maintained that line as what they compare it to. So each year they say, well, if Act 10 never existed, based off of the previous trajectory, healthcare costs would be this right now, but this is where our healthcare costs are, so this is how much money we're saving. So we apply that to the whole state.
Yeah.
And by doing that, I mean, we come out to the figure that it's saved $32 billion over that time. And it's, hey, and that's so there's that's what everything would cost the additional amount of money that taxpayers would have paid into the government had Act 10 never existed. So, it's the best figure that we can come up with, and like I said, you can't even call that methodology conservative because we're using a liberal government's own methodology on what Act 10 saved them. So, obviously, the liberals and the liberal activists, the unions, they want to wipe all that away, go back to the bad old days. So, let's start off by playing the video of, when Scott Walker revealed Act 10, or unveiled Act 10. This was from February 11th in 2011. For the current fiscal year that ends in June, Wisconsin is in the hole $145 million. To fix it, Governor Walker is proposing some dramatic changes to state employee unions and their ability to collectively bargain for items other than wages.
We have both an economic and fiscal crisis in the state. When it comes to the fiscal crisis, the reality is that we have to get this current budget, the soon-to-be forthcoming budget, and budgets for decades to come in line. We can no longer kick the can to the future. That's just unacceptable.
Under Walker's plan, unions could no longer negotiate for anything but salary and wages. Also, employees would have to contribute half of the state's 5.8% contribution to their pensions and pay 12.5% of their health care premiums. Walker argues these changes bring state employees more in line with the compensation provided in the private sector. The governor further says without these changes, drastic cuts to state employment and services would be necessary.
The alternative in this budget alone in fiscal year 2011 is to look at 1,500 layoffs of state employees, or up to 200,000, close to 200,000 children who would be bumped off of Medicaid-related programs. In the next biennium, if we were failed to make these changes, it would be the equivalent of anywhere from 5,500 to 6,000 state employees that would have to be laid off, and a similar number, an equivalent number of local government employees in both municipalities, counties, as well as teachers and others in school districts. I, for one, don't want to see anybody laid off in the state of Wisconsin.
Walker has taken heat for not negotiating a new contract with state workers since he took office, after state Democrats scuttled an earlier agreement last December.
Good faith negotiation requires give and take. We are broke in this state. We've been broke for years. People have ignored that for years, and it's about time somebody stood up and told the truth. The truth is we don't have money to offer. We don't have finances to offer. This is what we have to offer. And if you're going to negotiate, you got to have something to offer. We don't have something.
Walker wants the legislature to vote on his budget repair bill early next week. However, opponents say they've been blindsided.
And putting it in the regular budget will give the state of Wisconsin and us more time to talk about it, deliberate a little bit more, have probably a much stronger debate over it as opposed to just doing this in a week and getting it done.
There's a right for people to organize, in my opinion. And I think it's outrageous, the governor's dictatorial comment today.
Governor Walker says no one should be surprised by his proposal.
I think anybody who's watched me over the years, I was in previous office, and in the time I've campaigned, knows pretty simple. I identify the problem, I tell you what I think the solution is, and then I do it. That's exactly what I'm doing.
Well, I think the governor's comments were right on line with what we're seeing. If we don't make these changes to local government and their ability to handle the cost of pension benefits, health care, there's no way we can really address the problems that we have either as a state or at local level. So I think the governor's remarks are really leading to what the main issues that we've got to deal with to get our budgets under control.
As he outlined his proposed changes, Walker emphasized he has the utmost respect for state workers, and these proposed changes would help keep more of them employed.
We have good and decent people who work in state and local government. True public servants, professionals out there. There may be others who hear what we talk about today who will tie and somehow take that out of context. But the bottom line is I have great respect for the men and women who work as public servants at the state and the local level here in the state of Wisconsin.
Also Friday morning, the state sent a letter to the unions that their current contract extensions would be canceled on March 13th. They had been working with a current contract since 2009. For the MacIver Institute, I'm Bill Osmolsky.
The costs are astounding. The savings, in hindsight, are astounding. And this is pretty true everywhere in that public sector unions have a lot of power in every state, no matter where you go, especially teachers' unions. It's true in California big time. It's true in Florida. Doesn't surprise me that, teachers' unions and other public unions are really at the forefront of this and principally responsible for the financial crisis, that the state's suffering. So, it boggles my mind that public sector unions are even allowed to begin with. It seems like it's a huge conflict of interest. If you're going to receive your wages from the public, from the constituency, you should not be able to use the power of the law in order to improve your own financial position or to increase your own wages. It's immoral.
Yeah. All right, I'm going to show this real quick. This is one of my souvenirs from Act 10, General Strike. So, what is General Strike? That means all the workers in an area, a city or a state, they all stop working. Let the machinery of capitalism grind to a halt. The group that really promotes that these days is the IWW, the International Workers of the World. They are like a losers union. It is wrong to call them a trade union because they only represent unskilled workers. And so, they've got the most to gain by, a communist revolution, essentially.
Yeah.
You talk to legitimate trade union members, they want nothing to do with the IWW. Whenever the IWW starts talking about general strikes or mass strikes, labor union guys or trade union guys, they want, they turn the other way. Mm-hmm. And I find it kind of interesting that the public sector unions were so on board with that type of concept of a general strike. They essentially did throw a general strike, at least as far as state workers are concerned. They're, we've got some skilled workers among them, but for the most part, you're typists. You have no skills. Mm-hmm. You should be grateful to have a job that pays so well.
Right.
I mean, they are. Like public sector union workers. Yeah, you are. Same league as IWW. Not surprising that they decided that they were going to shut this state down, shut down government. After Walker gave that announcement the next week, we had the unions, they started showing up in mass protests. Wasn't so much on Monday, but Tuesday they started really picking up steam. That's when the first hearing was. The Joint Committee on Finance, they decided that they were going to let everybody speak. And as long as they were in session, as long as that committee meeting was going on, the building had to be open. So all these union workers, they just ringed around the Capitol, waiting for their chance to cry about how this was going to bankrupt their families.
Right.
It was disgusting. Grown men just bawling because I'm going to have to pay $50 a month for my health insurance.
Yeah.
So, no sympathy. Anybody that has a job that's not in government that pays for their own health insurance or has their own pension.
Right.
And, school teachers too. Hey, the dirty secret that nobody ever the teachers never want to tell you, they don't pay Social Security tax. That's like 7% of your income that we have to pay to Social Security. They don't pay that. So
that is huge.
Yeah.
The only reason these unions and these groups are at all successful is because they are in the public sector. If you look at union membership in the private sector, it's non-existent. It's less than 10%. I want to say it's 7%. I can't remember the figure, but it's less than 10%. And then you look at the public sector, and it's like 30% of all public employees are members of unions. That's only possible. They're only able to succeed because they can use the power of the state. You can't do that in a free market. So unions don't exist in the free market by and large. You have it in the trades, but there aren't that many people in the trades. And there aren't really that many unions in any other industry.
That's right, yeah. Tradesmen, carpenters, electricians,
Right.
they're all union members. Hey, I get it. But if you're talking about state workers, hey, you answer phone calls on the state complaint line. You type in numbers into a database. Guess what? Any high school grad can do that. Sorry.
Yeah, and you can even, compare the public and the private sectors to one another. Like you can look at public school teachers versus private school teachers. The unions work for the public school teachers because public school teachers get paid more. Yet private sector teachers probably do complain, but don't complain nearly as much about how much they're paid by their school.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Well, the unions, part of their strategy is keeping the workers, upset.
Yeah.
You're always getting screwed over. No matter how much we give you, it's you deserve a lot more, and you aren't getting because these people hate you.
Right.
So while that committee meeting was going on, the doors were open for 24, 48 hours. All the protesters, all the activists started coming into the building and bringing their sleeping bags and bringing their signs and setting up for the long haul. They were not going to go anywhere. Until they beat that bill. So I mean, they were in there for 28 days straight. They were occupying that building. They were shutting down committee meetings that they didn't like. They were bullying Republican lawmakers. They were bullying anyone who was wearing a suit because only Republicans wear suits, of course.
Yeah.
Always chanting, "This is the people's house." When they were in there, they were shutting down the people's business. Completely disgusting. We're gonna jump to this video, then we're gonna backtrack a little bit. But one of my, I was in the Capitol every day during this. I was at that press conference meeting, that press conference that we showed, and I was just bobbing in and out of those crowds, talking to whoever was dumb enough to answer my questions. And after a while, I realized I started to see signs all over because they had wallpapered the hallways, with all their propaganda. And I started to see like rules and regulations. And it got me curious.
Okay.
I went on an investigation, so here's the video from that.
Protesters have been occupying the Wisconsin State Capitol for 8 straight days. Law enforcement told the MacIver Institute Monday protest organizers appear to have established their own society and functioning government within the Capitol.
There's nothing like what you think. Well, I guess you could call it a miniature government. Absolutely, yeah.
You can find rules posted throughout the building and town marshals watching the crowds.
Marshals that are being organized through the TAA upstairs, and the TAA has been responsible for basically governing this house right now, creating their own, creating rules, enforcing them.
TAA would be the Teaching Assistants Association, but who exactly is calling the shots in Protest City? I was directed to the 3rd floor where the TAA had set up shop in a hearing room.
Oh, who's the mayor of this?
Yeah.
Oh. God,
Is this one person in charge, or is it kind of just like...
No, there's definitely not one person in charge.
I was directed to talk to someone named Jason.
Are you the mayor of all this?
No. We are all on the same level. I'm right now. I'm just acting as volunteer coordinator.
Okay.
So I'm just trying to get people hooked up with the people they need to talk to volunteer. So
How'd you guys get all this together?
Well, it was really just sort of emerging. We kind of just we were in kind of crisis mode, and then we all just developed the projects that we were interested in. So.
But protesters have still gotten out of hand. The doors to the Supreme Court were vandalized last week, and I talked to some protesters who admitted to smoking pot in the building.
Yeah, we got high.
Did they succeed in lighting up?
Yeah. Oh, Jesus.
Also last week, Capitol Police instructed legislative staff to lock their doors for safety, and officers insisted on escorting the staffers throughout the building. But the marshals don't seem to be aware of that.
They're here to peacefully demonstrate, so we haven't had any problems.
As long as the Assembly and the Senate are in session, law enforcement cannot legally kick the protesters out of the building. For the MacIver Institute, I'm Bill Osmolsky.
Yeah, so they set up their own municipal government within the Capitol. All right. Obviously, I'm sure my thoughts. You guys have any, Rebecca, what did you think?
About that video specifically?
Yeah, about that video. I mean, seeing essentially the mayor of Protest City.
I thought it was interesting that nobody was really willing to take the responsibility to call themselves the organizer of the protest, just a volunteer coordinator. I thought it was funny, but they were really working full time in the Capitol full time, so.
They know how to hide in a crowd.
Yeah. Do you think there was somebody who was really like the mastermind behind the protest
There had to have been.
Yeah.
You know, and usually, even today, like when I go to protests, like when I covered the Hamas protest at UW campus in the spring, there's always some older hippie who is very quiet, just kind of sitting in the corner, kind of like the extracurricular advisor type, who's telling them exactly what to do, answers all their questions, makes sure that they're getting the resources they need, because this stuff all costs money.
Yeah.
And they were just getting the amount of money that's pouring into Wisconsin to support this occupation. A lot of the graffiti around the Capitol, a lot of the signs, there are pizza boxes everywhere, because there's a restaurant on State Street here called Ian's Pizza. You probably know about that.
Yeah.
Ian's Pizza used to be a little hole in the wall. They had a much smaller shop. But somehow, during these protests, they were able to get word out that, hey, if you want to help out these protesters, buy them a pizza from Ian's. So, like, just the money was pouring into Ian's. And so they were just delivering stacks and stacks of pizza every day. And afterwards, they were able to buy that corner building that they're in now.
Really?
Well,
yeah, it worked out real well for them.
For them. It wouldn't surprise me if, the boss, the guy who's really in charge of organizing, wasn't even there, but he sends out, his enforcers and his underboss, right?
Oh, yeah.
To manage everything. But with that video, that guy, I'm sure there's a whole bunch of people at protests of this sort who have a delusional sense of self-importance, where they have made themselves king because they're so desperate to be in control. And the fact that, as we'll see, a lot of these people are self-declared socialists and communists and revolutionaries doesn't surprise me at all. But you had, how many people were inside the Capitol at the peak?
Oh, it's tens of thousands.
Tens of thousands?
Yeah.
Yeah. Most of those people didn't even know that guy existed.
Yeah.
He made himself a king of his little fiefdom in his little corner of the Capitol. And a few people knew about it and whatever.
Yeah, you mentioned the socialist video, so we'll roll that one now.
International socialist organizations are seizing upon government employee union unrest in Wisconsin.
Current events from a revolutionary perspective.
At a rally at the Capitol in Madison on Wednesday, socialist organizations joined the crowd, recruiting new members and drawing parallels to the recent revolution in Egypt.
We're a socialist activist organization based around the country with 2 branches here in Madison. We're the International Socialist Organization. I am a public employee here in Wisconsin. A lot of our members are.
People are mobilized. Skywalker's kicked a sleeping giant, if you will. And this is just evidence, as we're having more and more people every day, that the workers of Wisconsin aren't going to take this laying down.
I feel like this response actually partly reflects that we just spent a month watching people hold revolutions and stand up in a way that, frankly, I didn't imagine was possible in the near term. And I think it's incredibly inspiring. And I think, this is obviously a very different situation, but that kernel of resistance and defiance, I feel like, is the common thread here. And I'm so glad to be a part of it.
We also have an event coming up next Wednesday called From Cairo to Madison. We're going to talk about how to mobilize workers like they did in Egypt, because the mass strikes were what was so successful over in Egypt. So hopefully we can have something like that here and work for an egalitarian society in Wisconsin. So workers unite.
For the MacIver Institute, I'm Bill Osmolsky.
All right. 2 branches of the International Socialist Organization in Madison. Most of our members are state employees.
Big surprise.
Big surprise.
Big surprise. Who would have thunk?
Yeah. Like I said, I mean, they're like the IWW, ACLU, or not ACLU, AFL-CIO, right up there with the IWW.
Oh, great. Rebecca, you start, because they make a parallel.
Yeah, you picked out this video too. This is one of your favorites. So.
Yeah, I thought it was funny, the comparison to the protest that had happened in Cairo in Egypt. I think maybe it was like a month before.
Yeah.
The January protests in Egypt that led to the revolution. Just the comparison between like American union workers in Wisconsin and people fighting for civil liberties and like against oppression in Egypt. It was just very funny.
Yeah, Scott Walker, Hosni Mubarak, they, you know, 2 peas in a pod.
Yeah.
Yeah, the idea that teachers with cushy government jobs in the wealthiest nation in the world are in a situation that is in any way comparable to what is going on in Egypt is quite the stretch of the imagination on the
This
part
is
of
why
these
people hate
socialists.
Americans. All right, so this next video. So during this time, I know a lot of people still know the name the Drudge Report.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to realize now just how influential that blog was, you know, for a very long time. In 2011, it was at its peak. You know, like millions of people every day were going, tens if not hundreds of millions of people were going every day to this website. It's just the top conservative blog in the country. This is where you found out what the news was. You know, what are the big events that me as a conservative need to know about? And all he did was he had links to other organizations' news stories. During the Act 10, MacIver, we had, you know, like a half a dozen links on on Drudge Report every single day, you know, above the fold, you know, at the top.
Nice.
So we were already like making a big splash by, you know, covering these protests. But this next video, this is the one that just, you know, blew everyone's mind. So leading, you know, during this time, you know, you have tens of thousands of state workers, local employees, school teachers that are at the Capitol every day protesting. Well, this is a work week. They ain't going into work. And after a few days, a lot of these people, especially the teachers, are starting to think, oh, geez, it is illegal to go on strike. I might get in a lot of trouble for this. So that directly led to this.
Thousands of Wisconsin teachers and state workers called in sick this past week to attend protests in Madison. The sick outs caused dozens of school districts to close.
Some people up here are saying it's an illegal job action to not come into work today.
We're sick. We're sick and tired of Scott Walker.
By Saturday, some of the protesters were starting to become concerned about what could happen to them when they return to work.
We need a doctor's note for work. There are doctors on the corner signing notes.
So these are sick notes for work, so that people can have excuses for work.
We're a group of doctors representing ourselves, not necessarily our workplaces, providing work excuses for teachers or other union members who need them.
We are here writing doctor's notes to support our public employees who have been mentally anguished and distressed this last week and needed to be out here for their mental health.
A videographer, Christian Hartsock, decided he'd like to take these doctors up on their offer.
I'm from California, so I'm not used to this weather.
Okay.
You know, so it's very, very, very chilly, very cold.
Thank you.
You know, my legs have been numb, my feet have been numb.
Okay.
You know, it's just not weather I'm acclimated to.
So I'm concerned about that. I'd like you to take the rest of the day off today then and get some rest and, you know, try to stay healthy.
Okay.
After the doctors had been on this corner for several hours handing out excuse slips to people who had called in sick throughout the week, I confronted them about that.
No, we're not handing out anything. Can I help you?
Yeah, I just want to know if you're handing out doctor's notes.
We're not handing out anything. We're assessing people and you know, dealing with them appropriately in the privacy of their own medical conversation.
Okay, so
Did you want to get in the middle of that?
I just was curious if you guys were handing out, you know, doctor's notes.
I just wondered if you wanted to get in the way of like private consultations between people and a doctor.
Well, I was just wondering if you guys were handing out doctor's notes to cover, you know, an excuse absences. Is that what you're doing?
We're consulting with people in the privacy of that conversation. It's actually protected by privacy laws.
That's right. Yeah.
So.
Well, does that cover fraud?
What's that?
Does that include fraud?
What would you say is fraud?
Well, I mean, all these people called in sick this week, and if you guys were handing them excuses, I mean,
well,
how's that
what
not
we
fraud?
do every day, year round. I don't think I see you down here every day, do I?
Yeah, I've been here every day.
I mean, for every day, every year. Are you from Madison?
But not all of these doctors were so defensive about their activities Saturday.
What's going on here?
We are writing sick notes for anybody who needs them.
Who's sick?
Well, everybody is sick of Scott Walker.
For the MacIver Institute, I'm Bill Osmolsky.
Personal story with this one, like I said, I mean, this made the news all over the place. Rebecca, you were asking, you know, you asked me about did any of those doctors get in trouble? Ultimately, so we have the Medical Examining Board in Wisconsin, responsible for, you know, medical professional discipline. 15 of those doctors, those were fraudulent sick notes. The medical examining board, that's what they determined, so they all got reprimands. A little note in their file, so.
Got it.
Yeah.
And probably a file that only the medical examiners would see.
Yeah, probably. I mean, it's
no obligation to, put it on your office wall
Yeah.
for all your patients to see.
Well, yeah. I don't know. I think that I think that's a felony there. I mean,
Yeah.
writing out fraudulent medical documents. I mean, if you're
Right.
a doctor, you got a prescription pad, and you're just writing out prescriptions to yourself. That's a serious crime.
Yeah.
I would think producing fraudulent medical documents, no matter what it is, would be a serious crime. But slap on the wrist.
Yeah.
All right, here my personal the best story about this though. He said, I don't ever see you down here. What are you doing? My office is literally right above those doctors. That's how I saw it. Was I looked down and I saw all these doctors on the corner writing sick notes. I did the whole. You saw me standing on the balcony. That was this building that we're in right now. I was doing the whole, Desert Storm reporter thing where they were all just on their hotel balconies. With
You have your black vest on.
Yeah, exactly.
Press.
But yeah, so we were kind of like, the MacIver office was kind of like a hub. All these people, especially like conservatives from out of town that were visiting Madison to see these, they all came to MacIver's office. So it was like a party all the time. Andrew Breitbart had come and he had set up shop in our office for a few days.
Cool.
And after I shot the entire story, I'm up in my office. I'm editing it because I'm shooting these stories. I'm writing them. I'm editing them. I'm getting them out. All within an hour of having shot them. Andrew Breitbart bursts into the main office door and he says, I just caught all these doctors writing sick notes. I got the video of it. And here I am at my computer, probably like 15 minutes of work. I got to get this out before Andrew Breitbart puts it on his website and, he's broken it. So I beat Andrew Breitbart to that story. I was very proud of that.
Sweet.
Still am.
Work.
All right, let's see. What else do we have? We got, why don't we just jump ahead now to, we'll talk about the, we'll do those two lawmakers. Sandy Pash, Democrat, and Joel Clayfish, Republican, responded to the governor's budget, and he had to give the budget address during these protests. So let's listen to those two clips here.
Short on details and very disappointing on what's going to be the future for the state of Wisconsin. Once again, he's trying to do everything on the backs of the working people, on our children, on our most vulnerable, while he's putting money into the prisons and the roads. That's not something that's going to grow jobs or help the people in the state of Wisconsin.
Refreshing, enjoyable, exhilarating, exciting to see that Governor Walker is doing what he said he was going to do. We all ran and campaigned on the fact that we were going to stop balancing Wisconsin's budget on the backs of the taxpayers, and for the first time in decades, we're seeing that happen. Yes, everybody's going to have to chip in and take a little haircut. There's no question about it that these are tough times. But if we're going to improve the economy, we need to balance the state's budget without raising taxes so that the private sector can get working again.
So I guess with Sandy, so I wanted to see, what are actual representatives saying about Act 10 and how do they frame it, differently from the popular perspective of this. Really not that different. There are allusions to calamity, and being inflicted on these public sector employees who are not going to be able to afford to live anymore, won't be able to pay their bills, and blah blah blah, all this stuff. And it's totally unfair that they have to pay what is essentially the market rate for all of the benefits that they're entitled to. I mean, it's ridiculous. At the crux of this are teachers, and teachers are an untouchable group in America. They're one of the heroes. It's teachers, doctors, police, and firefighters, right? Anyone in those professions are untouchable. They can't be scrutinized. You can't criticize them. As a collective, as a group, they are untouchable and beyond reproach. I was a teacher. I know these people. They're not good people. They're not smart people. They're not qualified people. And they are not teachers. You're talking about millions and millions of people who view their job as an opportunity to raise your kids. If a teacher ever says, I love my kids, they think that they are their mother. They are not in the business of educating. They are in the business of moralizing and, making emotional connections with children. It's disgusting, it's inappropriate, and this is throughout every single school you will encounter in the United States. So teacher rant over.
Well, let me jump in there. I've actually started to collect, I have to watch school board meetings a lot of times online. It's horrible. But I started collecting video clips every time I catch, a school board member or a teacher talking about, raising our kids, or, anything along those lines. And they're always saying, oh, you raised my kids, I'm raising your kids. We'll have a great montage someday, but
it's the communist mentality. It takes a village sort of thing, right? We're essentially strangers who you do not know. I've met maybe 5 parents of any of the students that I ever had. They don't know me, and for me to think that I am their dad away from home is just a total breach of faith and trust that parents place in schools and in teachers specifically, who are around their kids for an hour every single day for all of their lives.
All right, so I should probably address here too. Why, how are these protesters able to occupy the Capitol for 28 days?
Oh yeah.
Why did it take so long to get this bill passed? So first of all, the unions, they were really smart right out of the gate. They the day before they started protesting, they started spreading all this propaganda that Scott Walker was a dictator, Mosby barbaric type, and he was going to call out the National Guard and they were going to bayonet the protesters. So immediately Scott Walker took that off the table. He was not going to call out the National Guard, no matter what.
Yeah.
So there was no way to really clear out that building. They eventually figured out some techniques later on where, okay, don't let anyone back in once they leave, get a judge to actually clear the building. But this is all police officers from all over the state that were helping manage this chaos, keeping these protesters from literally ripping Republicans apart. There were a number of police chiefs that said, if you try to clear out that building, I'm pulling all my police officers. So you couldn't clear out the building until eventually a judge said, look, this is a huge fire hazard, you got to get them out of there. So they were able to clear it for like an afternoon, and the protesters broke back in and nobody did anything about it.
Did the chiefs take that position because they were worried that their officers would be hurt? Because they
were liberals too. Yeah. Of course. So the reason why they couldn't pass this bill real quickly was the Democrats had just enough seats in the Senate to deny a quorum if they didn't show up.
Oh, okay.
Now, if they didn't show up, well, you could just have the state police round them up and make them come in. So they went and they hung out and they fled across the Illinois border to Rockford, where they hung out at one of the resorts for the better part of the month. And I'm just going to play a quick little fun video that we did about that here.
Average foot speed over uneven ground, barring injuries, 4 miles an hour. That gives us a radius of 6 miles. What I want out of each and every one of you is a hard target search of every gas station, residence, warehouse, farmhouse, hen house, outhouse, or doghouse in that area. Checkpoints go up at 15 miles. Your fugitive's name is
Senator Mark Miller.
So all the Democrat senators are hanging out in Illinois. and you need a specific quorum in order to pass a bill that has money in it. That's an appropriations bill. So the state senate came in. They made a motion to strip all the financial pieces out of the budget and just do the union reform part of it.
Okay.
So they pulled that out. They passed the bill. Before anyone knew what had happened, the budget repair bill had passed the Senate. So they were able to get out of there real fast. The senators all ran home, and yeah, that was over.
Okay.
So now it was the Assembly's turn. And obviously, everyone knows what the game is at this point. So this next video is the report of how the Assembly finally passed the budget repair bill.
After the Senate passed an amended budget repair bill Wednesday night, on Thursday it was the Assembly's turn.
To permanently take away the right that started in this state 50 years ago to collectively bargain. That's what you're voting for. Because the rest of this is pretty much not going to fix the budget.
You guys did your jobs. The light of day has been shined on this bill. It's been over 3 weeks. It has gone through the process. You have done your job. I commend you on showing up and doing your job. If you should be mad at anybody, you should be the Senate Democrats. The Senate Democrats who fled the state. Talk about lack of democracy. So you know what? We're going to take up this bill. We're going to vote on it in the light of day. It's going to pass. And then you know what? I hope everybody gets home safe.
Debate was limited to 2 hours for the bill, after which it was quickly called to a vote just before 4 o'clock.
Mr. Speaker, I move the Assembly special session stand adjourned until 10 a.m. on Tuesday, March 15th.
After it passed, Democrats and their supporters erupted. Law enforcement escorted lawmakers and staffers down a side staircase to avoid the hundreds of protesters that had gathered in the halls. Democrats say they will fight the bill in court, but for now, it's on its way to Governor Walker to sign into law. For the MacIver Institute, I'm Bill Osmolsky.
All right, and as you can tell, they lost their minds. You see all those rows and rows of police officers trying to keep these protesters from killing these lawmakers. Now, as a side note, you can imagine that my perspective on this type of stuff, this has heavily influenced my perspective on things. And when I watch all those video clips of January 6th, I just think, in my mind, I'm juxtaposing it with all these things that I saw in Madison.
Oh, yeah.
What would have happened if the January 6ers would have tried to set up their own city government in the U.S. Capitol? Or what would have happened if they would have, tried to literally tear lawmakers apart? And one of the things I never got a video, I wasn't there, unfortunately, but one of the nights they tried to, they had to get all the Republican lawmakers out of the building. They couldn't get them out the front door because, there's tens of thousands of protesters wanting to kill them. So they got them through the tunnels to pop up a couple blocks away. Well, all the protesters are state employees. They know about the tunnels.
Right.
They heard they're getting the Republicans out through the rat tunnels.
Yeah.
So they caught up with the last school bus right as it filled up with staffers and freshmen, and they were doing the whole rocket thing. They wanted to tip that thing over. They wanted to kill those people. And so, I'm thinking, imagine if that had actually,
So the lesson is, make sure to always keep a hammer and sickle T-shirt in your office, a fake beard, and a flannel jacket so you can blend in.
That's great. You see those blogs online of what every man should keep in their desk at work. Keep a spare shirt, a spare shirt, a toothbrush. I like yours for working in Madison.
There you go.
Yeah, Che Guevara shirt.
Can I ask, when you were interviewing all of those people in some of those videos, what were you wearing?
Just regular casual winter clothes. I wasn't wearing a suit or anything. I was just running around, and I think I had a ball cap on. I think one of the protests I was wearing like an army ball cap. So I ran into like some Veterans for Peace group, like, hey, he's one of us.
Yeah.
But for the most part, they never caught on. It was like probably 3 weeks into this before they started to realize, oh, there's people with cameras that aren't all on our side. So there were some moments that started to get a little, harrowing. And the night they kicked everyone out of the building, I kind of got stuck in a crowd, and somebody says, "This guy right here is a conservative."
Really?
Yeah, I'll play that right now.
Hey guys, watch out with this guy on the camera right here.
Why is that?
Because you're a narc, man.
I'm a narc? I'm a reporter.
No, you're not. Where are your press credentials? Nice press credentials.
I didn't bring him with me because I knew I couldn't get in the building anyway.
Sounds like a good excuse to be a narc to me.
Tea Party guy?
No, I'm a reporter.
He's with a think tank out of Milwaukee recording protesters' activities.
What were you afraid I'll see?
And then they clip them and heavily edit them and put them online to make it look like we're being not peaceful.
And add palm trees. Yeah. And throw bullets on the ground.
Yeah, what the?
Yeah, so they surrounded me, and they didn't know what to do. I guess it would have taken one, it's, like when you see those videos of the cats that have surrounded a rats, and it's, they're all just kind of puzzled, like, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? And eventually one cat swipes at the rat and it's all on.
Yeah.
Fortunately, I didn't get to that because one of the Democrat lawmakers, he didn't realize that he saved my skin. He opened up the door from the inside to let all the protesters in. So yeah, so that diffused that, and then they went in and they knocked the cops around and took the Capitol back over. But.
Yeah, you could have taken them.
Yeah. Well, I was rolling the camera, so at least there would have been a great forensic record of it. It could have been one of those like Blair Witch horror movie type things. Found footage is the name of the genre.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's great to revisit this type of stuff, especially for like you guys that didn't live through this. And it's interesting too to see, you get to watch these videos. These are like moments in time, like time capsules. You see that press conference. Nobody had a clue how this was going to turn out when that first video report was made. And they certainly didn't know. Oh, over the next 13 years. Taxpayers are going to save, $30 billion from this.
Right.
I mean, Walker was pretty confident that that's how this would play out, because he said, this is about balancing budgets for years to come. And, I mentioned how this is also, a generational thing. You guys have no idea what it was like in, government financing, prior to Act 10, prior to 2011. But it seemed like every local government, it was a perpetual budget crisis. The state government, every budget was just starting out with a huge deficit. It's like the state budget that year was, they were going to start the process shortly after in the spring. They were already starting out with like a $2 or $3 billion deficit that they had to fill before they could even, just cost continue. We haven't had that conversation for 13, 14 years in Wisconsin.
Yeah.
So people have no idea, like, hey, people are, cheering, oh, yay, the unions can come back now. Now I'll get a huge pay raise that, they're going to finally pay me for what I'm worth, even though I'm an unskilled worker.
Yeah.
So this is, but they have no idea the consequences of that. This is, property taxes were out of control. When we had, right before Walker, it was Democrat governor, Democrat legislature, and they were just piling on taxes everywhere. And that's the state government. Local governments can't do that, so they're just trying to cut everywhere they can. It was just pressure from all sides. It is cannot be overstated. Just like this is like just hitting the relief valve for everybody. And so times have been really good in Wisconsin ever since. From a government finance perspective, every state budget, we're always bringing in more money than we even budgeted. It's always. No matter what we seem to budget, it's always, hey, there's a surplus. Oh, there's another surplus. Surplus is on top of surplus. It's up to $4 billion now.
Yeah.
Act 10 goes away for real. Right now it's just kind of suspended and it's going to be appealed. If this thing, if this thing actually gets, dead and buried, hang on to that, I would tell the state, hang on to that $4 billion surplus because you're going to go through it in about, maybe 2 budget cycles.
Yeah. And it'll all be gone and you'll be back to where you were.
Yeah.
Pre-2011.
All right, so Oh, I just one last thing. It's kind of a little bit off, but you just want to talk about this real briefly before we close it this week. But you bring up like the teachers, and having believing that they're the ones raising these kids.
Yeah.
Did you hear about the Supreme Court case in Eau Claire?
Oh, yes. What?
So in Eau Claire,
jog my memory.
Yeah. So in Eau Claire, the school district, there was a policy where if a kid wants to transition, if they want to use a different name at school, you don't have to tell the parents.
Right.
And the parents lost their minds, and this became a huge court case. And the Supreme Court, the U.S. Supreme Court, just said, "Yeah, not interested."
Yep. Yes. Yeah, I remember this now. This was one that Ben Yount wrote for us, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, proof's in the pudding right there. I mean, by even having that as a policy, you are admitting that you know better than the parents, that you know their kids better than they do, and that you know children that you know children in general better than they do, or better than anyone else, that you can permanently alter a child's physical body, and that it would be the right thing to do, and that not only can we do that, we don't even have to tell you about it because you aren't worthy to know. It's not relevant information to you as a parent to know that, we have referred your child to a psychiatrist who has diagnosed them now with gender dysmorphia, and who will then refer them to a cosmetic surgeon who will, permanently, alter them, or to an endocrinologist who's going to give them testosterone replacement therapy or whatever other, hormones that they might need that are unreversible. This just, and it's happening all over the place. California did this too and went way, way, way overboard with this stuff. Not only did the governor say, the same thing, right, that was said in Eau Claire, which is that schools do not have to inform parents, but that if you are a parent and you deny your child, gender swapping surgery or hormone replacement therapy, that the custody of the child will revert to the state. You will lose your children. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I think that's awful. I mean, it's disgusting.
I've made this point over the years, so it's probably it's not really bold of me to say, but and I don't have kids, but I read all these, I cover all these stories, and I really think if you put your kids in public schools at this point, I'm not saying that you don't love your kids and you don't care about their well-being, but everything about like these violent school fights, about the sexual abuse, about these terrible test scores, I'm not saying you don't care about your kids' success, about their safety, you don't love them. I'm just saying that there's something in your life that's a lot more important than homeschooling them or putting them in a private school. Your kids are not the top priority in your life.
Yeah.
I know it's changing, but I will say that when I went to high school, Germantown High School, I had a fantastic experience with good teachers, although they were definitely liberal and Democrats. It was easy to tell. I had a really good experience and nobody tried to change my gender. So like I've heard it's changing. I see the videos, but I had a good experience in Wisconsin.
So it's not at every school. I mean, obviously, the risk is there.
Yeah.
And, about a year ago, I put together a montage because I was talking about this on VCY TV in Milwaukee. And I took all these just video news clips of brutal fights and bullying that happened in Wisconsin schools. And I made a point of not using city schools. These were all suburban or rural schools. And just brutal stuff. I mean, you watch this and there is no way that I would ever send any child of mine to a public school.
Yeah. Most people's exposure to violence only comes from public schools. If you were to ever experience violence in your life, it will be at a public school.
Oh yeah, good point.
I mean,
and
that's
so,
it.
Yeah, and so like my point with that is, okay, maybe it didn't happen at Germantown School. Could have, any day.
Yeah. I mean, so I graduated high school in 2014, and I had a pretty decent experience as well. I'm from Santa Cruz. All of my teachers were lefties. There's no doubt about it. My high school teachers, I never saw them picketing or, skipping out on work and asking for pay raises, but my elementary school teachers did. My elementary school teachers didn't do this to me, but they did it to my younger sister. My younger sister had a teacher in 3rd, 4th, 5th grade, something like that. And this was during Obama's second campaign run. She came home with an Obama pin that she had gotten from her teacher.
Oh, wow.
And a bunch of teachers were doing this at the elementary school, handing out Obama pins to their students, kids who know absolutely nothing about politics. They don't even know what it is. They don't know what government is. They know there's a president and that his name is George Washington. Or George Bush or Barack Obama.
Those teachers were fulfilling the purpose of public education to create Democrat voters.
Right. But so I didn't really have, any political experiences like that, but I can tell you in retrospect that even in high school where, my teachers were pretty good, that the history education was not very good. The economics education was not very good. It was Keynesian. My English teachers were very good. My math teachers were very good. Science was good, but the science teachers tended to be, sort of loosey-goosey, hippy-dippy guys where, you did a couple of big field trips every year. And
lots
it was
of extra credit opportunities.
Lots of extra credit, 10 minutes of lecture, then it's, work with a partner on this thing, right? So that stuff catches up to you, right? They don't have to be bad people or political people to not be good teachers, right? My best teachers were overwhelmingly in math, right? Because anyone who wants to be a math teacher likes math.
Well, and it's objective too. Can you do the problem or can't you?
Right, yeah. But all of my younger siblings have gone to the same schools, and they've told me that that's changed. There are new teachers in there now. School is quite political, and it really shows. And they don't even, my brothers didn't even know that they were taking geometry. They don't even call geometry anymore. It's Math 2 or Math 4. I was like, oh, you're a junior, you should be taking pre-calculus. And they're like, I don't know, it's Math 4.
Yeah.
Like, what? So things like this add up.
Yeah, and this also highlights the importance of courts and having good courts. Liberals are always there. Oh, the conservative U.S. Supreme Court. If the shoe was on the other foot, if it was a lefty U.S. Supreme Court and it was an issue of this importance, you better believe they would have taken it up. So it's really a shame that they passed on this, and it's this also pushes it back on first of all the parents. Again, do you really want your kids going in this type of environment every day with people who think that they're more important than you are as their parents?
Right.
And two, this is also a call for conservative activists. Hey, you got to get on these school boards.
Yeah, and I understand too why parents don't take their kids out. What are your alternatives? Private school and homeschooling. Private school, it's expensive.
Well,
it is, right? And you're not going to get, and you probably don't have a school voucher program where you're going to get your property tax money back. That's not going to happen.
Yeah,
right?
well, I will say though, with a lot of the religious schools, you're talking a couple $1,000 a year in tuition. They heavily subsidize. Yeah, shop around.
Yeah.
You think, prep school where you're wearing a sport coat every day. Yeah, that probably is out of the range of a lot of parents.
Yeah. So there's that financial concern of having to pay more for private school and still have to pay for the public school. And then there's the homeschooling thing, and parents are thinking, well, I don't have the knowledge or ability or time to teach, my kids at home. That's not how homeschooling works anymore. There are now homeschooling groups. There are homeschooling programs. Your kid, they might be miserable doing it. It's not for everyone, right? You sit at a computer, you have a teacher in front of you with like 5, 6, 10 other kids on Zoom or whatever it is, or pre-recorded lectures or whatever, right? There's a bunch of different ways of doing homeschooling. And homeschooling, the one I'm familiar with, the Ron Paul curriculum, right? It's like $300. $300 and that's it. And it's K through 12. That's nothing.
Yeah.
Right? And it's all pre-recorded videos. The lectures are there. The assignments are there. They get released to you as you're, subscribed to this thing. That's it. It's
And then
doable.
they're going to end up getting a lot better education than they will at the public schools anyway.
Much better. You can be dang sure the history's better, and they learn about the Constitution and civics and all of that. That stuff's not in public schools.
Well, and keep in mind, I mean, the best public schools in Wisconsin, you've got like a 40% proficiency rate in math and English.
Yeah, it's abysmal.
Which is shocking, and I don't think most people know that, at least like among my peers. Nobody knows that.
Yeah, exactly. And because they still graduate you.
Yeah.
But that's another way to look at it. I mean, it's, if you send your kid to public school, they've got a 40% chance of coming out being able to read and do math.
Yeah.
Horrible. So anyway, all right, we'll wrap this up for today. I know we're planning on coming back again next week. We'll see if we can make that happen. Rebecca's got her finals, so wish her luck on those. So either we'll be back next week to do an end of the year show, or we'll see after. We'll see you next year. So have a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, and we will see you then.